Welcome back to the channel, you guys. This is just another gentle reminder to stop beating yourself up, stop blaming yourself. We are here to understand why we make the decisions we make in the market, and there's no shame in that. So if you've ever broken your trading rules, this whole series, but especially this episode, is for you. And yeah, if you've ever broken your trading rules, which the majority of traders have at some point, it's not because you're lazy, it's not because you lack discipline, it's none of those things, right? You're not bad at trading, it's because your brain was under stress. And so this episode, we're actually going to talk about why that happens, why it's not a personal failure, it is a biological response. Most traders actually think the problem is discipline. They'll say things like, I know the rules, I just don't follow them, or I just need more self-control. But the truth is, you don't actually break trading rules just because you don't care about them. Trading rules get broken because, the version of yourself that makes the rules is not the version of yourself that is actively trading in the live market. And that's a huge problem, right? Because trades are planned and calm, but when we execute them, we're under a lot more stress, so that changes things. When you are planning your trades, when you are charting, when markets aren't really moving a whole lot, when you are journaling or planning your trades, you're calm, right? 9 times out of 10, you're in a way more relaxed state. And so the part of your brain responsible for the logic and the planning, that is called your prefrontal cortex, right? We're going to call it the PFC for short. And that PFC is responsible for your logic, your planning, your restraint, your decision making. When your PFC is online, you are sizing according to your account and your risk tolerance. You are, cutting your losing trades. You are taking profit. You're even, you're executing without a whole lot of effort. It almost feels effortless. And when your PFC is online, this is how we access what we call our flow state. And so here's the problem, right? When your PFC is overstimulated, maybe from watching the market for hours and hours and hours without taking any sort of breaks, or the market starts moving really fast, or a trade goes against you and you start to see some of your money go back into the market, right? A lot of those things like fatigue, stress, overstimulation, all of those things can cause your PFC to disengage and ultimately go offline, right? And when that happens, it takes your logic, your reasoning, your planning, all of those processes go offline right along with it. And as your PFC disengages, that is when your amygdala sounds the alarm, and that's when your emotional brain starts to actually take over. And yeah, you didn't actually forget your rules, you just lost access to them. Okay, so let's talk about dopamine, right? Let's throw that into the mix. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter, right? So basically, dopamine spikes at the anticipation of a reward or pleasure, right? So like charts, candles, alerts, breakouts, fake outs, right? All of these things can trigger dopamine. And that's when your brain starts to whisper at you. It's like, this is our one opportunity at getting rich. This is the setup. We have to get in right this second. So you click, right? You click, and it's not because there's an actual setup. It's because it gives your brain relief. When we talk about overtrading, right? It's not necessarily just a bad trading habit. It's actually a dopamine seeking behavior. It's not just about chasing money, right? It's a little deeper than that. It's almost like, you're not actually chasing money because there's no setup, but you are chasing the possibility that it could work out and could result in a reward. And so with that in mind, we also want to think about boredom from a trader's perspective, but also from like a neurological perspective. And boredom is something that a lot of people don't talk about because it's not exciting. For traders, sometimes it can be really uncomfortable when the market's flat, right? If there's not actually anything to do, that can trigger boredom. And our brains do not like understimulation, right? Our brains like to be active. They like to have something to do. Our brains hate waiting, right? Our brains hate when there's nothing going on. And so boredom turns into restlessness, right? Restlessness turns into impatience, and impatience turns into impulsive entries. And you'll actually start manufacturing opportunities when the market's not actually presenting them. And this is like a snowball effect, you guys, so stay with me. But from those bad trades that are triggered through impatience and boredom and restlessness, right? Now we're talking about losses. And again, our brains, they perceive losses as like a threat to our safety. And that triggers a stress response, right? Again, that triggers the amygdala, that, our cortisol, that's our stress hormone, that spikes. And again, stress to the prefrontal cortex is like kryptonite, right? So, that's why we always want to be mindful of our emotional state before we even enter the market, right? We always want to come at it with a really calm, relaxed state of mind. And so anytime we experience a financial loss, our natural reaction is to alleviate that. It's going to come up as like, the sudden urge to get it all back, right? To jump immediately back into a position after you've lost money to recover what you've lost. That is a natural reaction. Your brain wants to undo the damage, right? So you might jump into things, you might chase price action, you might feel the urge to size up. This behavior can manifest in all sorts of ways. But again, this behavior, it's not necessarily just about chasing money and getting more money back. It's actually neurological. It is your brain's way of chasing like an emotional balance or even like an equilibrium, right? We can use a big word. But yeah, at that point, your brain just wants to fix it, right? It just wants the pain to stop. And a lot of traders get stuck here because a lot of times we attach our identities to our trade outcomes. And this identity shift can really happen like after a winning streak or a losing streak. And one of the reasons I guess it's so dangerous for people to attach their identity to their P&L is because like you go from, being a trader, making objective decisions to almost shifting the focus to trying to prove something to the market. And like, as soon as you start trying to prove something to the market, you've kind of already lost. And just remember, you need a trading system. You need structure. That is something that we teach in our classes, in our mentorship. Like, it's not about having more rules. It's about having a routine and learning how to regulate yourself to the point where you can actually stick to it. So before you enter the market or even enter an individual trade, just check in with yourself, ask yourself, how am I feeling? Do I feel calm and relaxed? Or do I feel, a sense of urgency to get into the market? And that is, one of your very first red flags. After, a win or a loss, take a step back, take a pause to recalibrate your emotions, because your best trading is going to come from that relaxed mental state. Even when you go back to review and journal your trades, which I hope you guys are journaling, and I'll talk about that later. I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole, but journaling is so important. Writing it down, reviewing yourself, top tier behavior, okay? Make sure when you are journaling that you're doing it from a relaxed mental state, right? You don't want to journal after, if you're raging from a loss or if you're feeling like the top of the world from a win. You want to make sure you're analyzing yourself with no bias, and you want to be as objective as possible. And if you're bored, take a walk, touch grass. Don't sit and stare at your monitor for hours on hours on hours, because the longer you do it, the more your decision quality breaks down. Remember, your PFC super, super sensitive to overstimulation. And just remember, give yourself grace. We know you don't break your rules because you just don't care about your money, right? Nobody wants to lose money. Rules are broken when our brains are under pressure. And honestly, once you really understand that, you can stop beating yourself up. You can stop tussling with yourself and just focus on trading with intention from the right mental state. If this resonated with you, make sure you hit like and subscribe. And in the next episode, we're going to get into impulse control and how you can break these patterns in real time. I'll see you in the next one.